Welcome into Rounding the Bases, the podcast about culture and leadership with a baseball twist, presented by Enterprise Bank and Trust, hashtag no stopping you. Enterprise Bank and Trust was founded by entrepreneurs with the core focus of serving privately owned small and medium-sized businesses who have a story to tell. Enterprise Bank's commitment is to listen, learn, and guide clients to a lifetime of financial success. Enterprise Bank, together, there is no stopping you. I'm Joel Goldberg, coming to you from the Kansas City Audiovisual Studios. They create engaging spaces. Check them out at kcav.com. I've got a phenomenal guest today. I know I say every guest is a great guest. It's true. I've also said, and I think many of you have heard me mention this many, many times before, that while I did not serve in the military, I've had so many fortunate life experiences involving the military because of the access that I have to cool experiences, being on television, and whether that was going over and spending time with the troops in Kuwait and broadcasting live from over there, or getting a chance as a young television reporter to go down to Panama. I don't know why they picked me. They said, hey, come down with the National Guard and do some stuff on them building bridges in the middle of the jungle. And then just the access to so many men and women in all branches of the military that end up at our stadiums, or some of the cool tours and getting in some of the planes and all that type of stuff. So I've always been fascinated by it. But I think more importantly is there's just so many lessons to learn from members of the military. And recently I had on Debbie Lee, one of the best podcasts I think I've done. And she spent so much time talking about all that she's doing for the families of those who have lost loved ones, for the Gold Star families, and she herself lost her son, who was a Navy SEAL in Iraq. And my guest today is someone that did come home and did survive, and his life changed, and he's making a massive impact in so many other lives. And Jacob Schick is a third-generation combat Marine. He's a motivational speaker. He's an actor who epitomizes service and sacrifice. Jake helps individuals and teams maximize their potential by using his experience and the effects of being severely wounded in Iraq. His story is one of recovery, resilience, and he motivates individuals to live well. He's a staunch advocate, and I really want to talk about this a lot, of mental and emotional wellness. And I'm so excited right now to bring in Jake, who, by the way, is the CEO of the One Tribe Foundation, 22 Kills, an organization and community that combats suicide by empowering veterans, responders, and their families through traditional and non-traditional therapies. That's a lot, and we've got a lot to discuss right now. So I'm happy to bring in from, I believe, his home in Texas, Jacob Schick. Jake, how are you?
Great, brother. Thank you for having me. Honored to be here today.
Well, I'm honored to have you, and that's just the short version of a bit of your story. You know, I'm so always inspired by people like you, and you're not the only one, that spend their every day trying to help out others, trying to make lives better, especially because you experienced this. And I don't know the answer. I think I know the answer, but just wondering how much that's a part of your mission, your purpose, how much of your life now is geared towards this cause.
It involves almost every decision I make on a daily basis, but most importantly, to start with myself. I mean, I need to be completely at peace and in love with the person looking back at me in the mirror if I'm going to be able to effectively help anybody else. And so it's an ongoing thing, just like learning. It'll happen till the day I die, and evolving. It'll be a constant evolution throughout my lifetime until I'm dead and gone. We have to be willing to learn and orbit outside of our comfort zone if we're going to grow as human beings. And so it's an all day, everyday thing, and I'm okay with that because that's what it takes to get better.
Well, I mean, not only are you okay with it, but to me at least, and you and I have chatted a little bit beforehand, it's a progression of life. And maybe that was forced by your circumstances. Maybe you would have come there in a different way. I mean, I think I'm a smarter guy and a more well-rounded and mature person. My wife might say otherwise, than I was when I was a younger guy, right? And you hope that you learn those lessons. Maybe a lot of them were forced on you, maybe not. But I just think, and talking to you too, that there's such a stereotype of a Marine and not just Marines, but many members of the military, tough, we can handle anything.
Mm.
And it feels to me like while you are or you were that guy, I'm pretty sure that you were, that you're almost pushing back on that every single day too, digging on the inside. And how challenging is that? Because your whole life, I'm sure, were wired a different way.
Yeah, it is a significant challenge. I mean, especially when you're trying to get into fire departments and police departments, and you're trying to talk to these men and women and tell them like, hey, listen, you don't have to do the tough person bravado, the things that the Marines absolutely are known for. I mean, it's for good reason. I mean, we're undefeated. There's a reason for that. But it's, it doesn't help. There's a time and place to put that hat on. And it's definitely not when you're trying to exorcise the demons that live in your soul in order to evict them. It's not that time. And it's really difficult because what we really stress and what we need people to understand is like, look, it's okay to not be okay. That's perfectly okay. And it's perfectly normal. Post-traumatic stress is nothing more than a normal reaction to an otherwise abnormal situation. And that's perfectly normal. It's okay. It's okay to feel anxious, and it's okay to feel scared, and it's okay to feel like you don't know what to do next and you don't know what's triggering these emotions, and that's okay. There's a lot of people that never wore a uniform that deal with the same thing. We don't own post-traumatic stress and traumatic brain injury. We just don't. As warriors, we do not own those things. They've been around since the beginning of time. They've been referred to as different things, but it's the same thing. And that's why it's another thing I want people to understand is that trauma is the great equalizer, because everybody's experienced it in some way, shape, or form. And there's no Richter scale on it, right? So I can't look at someone and go, well, that person's situation is way worse than my situation. I will never do that, because what's mine is mine and what's yours is yours. That's the only thing that makes it unique. But it is still the great equalizer. Like there's no Richter scale. It can't be measured. And so that's what we have to understand, I think, as human beings, is that, we go through very challenging times more often than not, starting in our childhood, that goes unaddressed in a healthy manner, that carries over into our adult life, where we experience high stress situations and we don't have tools and proper knowledge to deal with those situations, which then in turn exacerbates the demons we already had. And then it just turns into a snowball effect, And so we have to be able to have the courage to find victory in our vulnerability and refuse to be a hostage to our pride if we're going to be able to grow forward. That's the only way.
I think the vulnerability word it's so important, because we've all been trained in some form or another. This doesn't have to be a physical thing either, to not admit to being wrong or not admit to knowing what we don't know. And it's amazing to me, like sometimes I just find that when you're upfront about that, it's not a sign of weakness. Like, hey, I don't know this. What can you help me with? People like to help each other out. We're wired that way as human beings, but we've been taught to put up that outer shell in whatever it is. And yet I find it so much easier just to say, hey, can I pick your brain on this? What do you know about this? Can you help me?
That's it. When people, I do podcasts like yours, or I go do interviews, or I do, all the stuff that I do to fight for the greater good. That's the point, is what platform can I utilize to help feed souls and make people want to be better? Like, that's how I start and end my day. What can I do? Because in turn, it's therapy for me. It makes me feel better about me. And it's no secret. Look, I surround myself with people smarter than me, and by default, I'm smarter. By default, I'm better. If I were to surround myself with a bunch of people that, like I used to hang out with in school many moons ago, early on, especially, I wouldn't be doing the things I'm doing. I probably wouldn't be a dad. I probably wouldn't be alive. And, it's just, we are herd animals. as human beings. We need each other in order to be effective. And that's why this global pandemic has been so detrimental to so many people's mental and emotional wellness, is because we're not used to the isolation, and we're not used to not being able to talk to people. Because while we can do things like this, and most people that I'm sure that listen to your podcast and watch it have been or done a Zoom meeting or Microsoft Meet or Google Classroom or et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But it's still impersonal, right? Like, it's when I do speaking, and you'll know this as a speaker, I hate doing it through a computer screen, because me, as an intuitive human being, I feed off of an audience's energy.
No question.
I have to feel that energy, because if I don't, it's hard. I'm like, I feel monotone, Bueller,
Yeah.
Bueller. And it's not the same effect, and that's why it's like, look, we don't know what we don't know, and hurt people. That's what we have to understand. And if we understand those things and we're at peace with those things from the jump, the rest is going to come. That's where vulnerability is. Vulnerability is nothing but courage in disguise.
I couldn't agree with you more. And I'm thinking about what you're saying, as I've got a virtual speech a little bit after you and I are done, and it'll be right from here. And it's a double-edged sword, because I believe that on the one end, you got to make the best of it. And so I refuse to complain about it. And so I really talked myself into saying, hey, this is doable. And it is.
Yeah.
Like, if this is the only thing you could do, it is. And it's counterproductive to be like, man, I wish I was here. This isn't the same. And, and I try to convince clients, just as I'm sure you do, that, hey, I could still make an impact on what you're doing, and we could do it this way. However, there's no way to replace that face-to-face. There's just not. And you make the best of it, but it's just not the same.
It's not. But that comes with having the vulnerability to be honest. And you set expectations, right, that are realistic, because false expectations inevitably lead to disappointment. And we don't. You want to avoid that. Be honest from the jump. Be honest from the jump. Explain. Look, it's different when I'm there live and in living color. It's just different, because my energy feeds off their energy feeds off my energy. I'm not saying it's not going to be impactful or effective for somebody, because say if I'm speaking to 5,000 and someone asks me, well, what's your goal? Well, if one person leaves and goes, you know what, I want to be better tomorrow than I was today, that's a victory.
Mm-hmm.
That's a win. If we do all this work we're doing with what's now 22 Kill, it'll roll into One Tribe Foundation, is if we save one person, or we help someone, we equip them and give them the tools to save themselves, because ultimately that's what we're doing. We're not God. We don't have the ability to save somebody from themselves anyway. If it's just one person, that's a win. It's all worth it.
Totally agree. And those victories can come in the smallest of ways. Sometimes, this, you just get an email from someone that you spoke to that says, hey, I wanted to thank you for blah, blah, blah. And it's like, wow, all right. This is why I do this. And on the much larger scale, saving a life, and it's more than one life, but yes, if it's just one. So I want to go back and then as we get to talking about 22 Kill, I'm guessing, correct me if I'm wrong,
sure,
that as the third generation, a Texas kid, football player, that you knew what you wanted to do. You were tough. You were driven. And maybe I'm missing some things, or maybe I'm making some things up. But what were you like as a high school kid growing up, headed towards the Marines?
I was. I lived and breathed football. That's why I went to high school. Like that was my job. School wasn't my job. Football was my job. Mm-hmm. And I just loved the sport. I fell in love with the sport early on, and it was tough because my dad and my older brother both baseball players, and for me it was just that sport did not do for me what football did. And so, but I played it because I was trying to appease dad and then chase older brother, which, both just felt impossible, which both, in hindsight, it was me fooling me on those things. But I just never, I never really, baseball never, I could hit a baseball, and then that's where it stopped. I could do anything else in regard to the sport. And, baseball is much more of an art. Football is much different. Like if you can run full speed and collide into someone else and have zero hesitation in order to do that, you can play football. And so that's what I could do. And that's one thing I enjoyed. But man, I knew at the age of 8 I was going to go to the Marine Corps. I knew at a very young age that that's what I wanted, and I was really close to my grandmother growing up. And because my papa, who's the first generation Marine and fought World War II, he was on Iwo Jima, the island hopping campaign. He died a couple of years before I came along, and she would always talk to me about him, and her chest would swell with pride, and her eyes would light up, and I just knew, like, okay, well, if she's going to talk about me like that, I have to be a Marine. And so that's where it got in my head. But I distinctly remember at a really young age, I was probably 5. And she took me down the street to Red's house. I don't think it was his name, but everybody in the neighborhood called him Red. And Red was a combat photographer in World War II. And I remember sitting on Red's lap and my Mimi saying, Red, show him those pictures. Show them those pictures that you have, that you took. And it was of a liberated concentration camp. And I remember seeing these piles of emaciated bodies, these dead bodies. And he looked at her like, Marge, are you sure? She said, show them to him. And he was showing me these photos. I'm 5 years old. And of course it's horrific, but I remember distinctly having a feeling that I need to do something to make sure that doesn't happen again. I need to do something like my grandfather did that can play a hand in the greater good and helping people that I'll probably never meet and know, because that's what this life's all about. And so I decided right then, I'm going to do something. I don't know what it is, but I'm going to do something. And then at the age of 8 is when I decided the United States Marine Corps was going to be my route come hell or high water. And that's why at the beginning of my senior year, I signed up. And then I just didn't tell anybody about it. I thought that was a good idea. Turns out that probably wasn't the best approach, but that's what I did.
Well, I mean, it's amazing too. First off, powerful to see that image at 5. I don't really know if I ever remember a time not seeing those images. When you have the last name of Goldberg and ancestors, you know about this stuff. You're taught about that. And
how could you not?
How could you not? But I mean, I just think it's pretty powerful beyond just, hey, this is what my dad did. This is what my family has done. That you had that pull in you early on to say, I have to make a difference, which really isn't any different than what you're doing now, too. Like, it's almost like this has always been in you in some form or another.
Yeah, for the most part, yeah. I mean, because I had a really, I didn't have a cookie cutter childhood. It was, my parents divorced when I was young, and it was just a really unhealthy split. And, it was just, and of course, alcohol's involved, and there was substances involved, and which only add to destruction. And so it was a very, very unhealthy situation that no one knew how to deal with because no one had been through it before, to include my parents. So, that was really hard on me. And then in small town Louisiana, where I was at the time, because I got to Texas when I was 12, that made me a target for other kids. And that made me get picked on. Everybody knew everybody's business. And so I don't know if that played a hand in wanting to be better and help people. And I don't know. I would like to believe, and the jury's out, man. I haven't decided if we're born with God-given talents or if that's something that over time we decide, okay, I'm going to feed this part of my soul and I'm going to get better at this part. Or if it's we're born and God goes, okay, you're a natural born leader. You're a natural born leader. Or you can throw a baseball. You can hit a baseball. You can catch a football. You can, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I don't know. I don't know that there is. I think everybody, my point is this. I think we're all born completely innocent, decent, loving, caring human beings.
Yeah.
And I think that we choose over time through experiences and otherwise who we're going to become.
I think I buy that, and of course, it has to do a lot with the influences around us, and then you grow from that. I mean, your kids are influenced by you, and mine by me, and everybody that's around us, and the experiences. And so, and I know you've told the story a million times, but for my audience that hasn't heard it, seen it, or even if they have, take me back to that day in 2004 and what was a life changer.
Yeah, that was a long day at the office, for sure. I was a part of the React team, which is the same as the QRF, Quick Reaction Force, and we'd gotten a call and got a React call, and it was after a long night. We had a really long night because we had a standoff, the Iraqi National Guard, us versus them. About 65 of them, 10 Marines on the React team, me and 9 Marines, and I always like to say, so to my math, they were heavily outnumbered, the ING. And so we got finally to bed. The guys got to bed. I didn't get to bed till much later because of adrenaline and all kinds of other things. But then, React gets called, wake up. And before we got orders at Al-Assad to go to this place, because our primary area of operation was the Sunni Triangle, also known as the Triangle of Death, because Unicorn Triangle and Rainbow Triangle were already taken, so they just called it the Death Triangle. We knew this was a busy place. We knew this was the summer of 2004, that this was going to be every ounce of our training, grit, and determination was going to be put on display, and we knew it. And so we ended up getting orders that we're going to go from Al-Assad to a place called Dulab, Iraq. And before I left, I told my family and my friends, like, hey, listen, don't send me anything. Don't write me. I'm not going to write you guys. Don't watch the news. No news is good news. I'll see you in 7 months, because I have a job to do. And, my family puts the Jerry and Springer, and I didn't need any of that crap affecting me over there, having a job to do. I had to be laser focused, and I had to be there 100% present for my brothers to my left and my right. That's what I needed to do. And so we got these orders to Dulab, and I just got a bad feeling in my gut. I don't know why. I mean, you'll hear me say this again, but I got a bad feeling, and I broke my own rule, and I went to the call tent and called my family and called my dad last, and told my dad, hey, Pop, and I'm the only kid that calls him Pop, so he knew it was me. And I said, hey, Pop, there's the delay from the overseas calls, which I'm sure you've experienced when you went to Kuwait. And I knew it was about 10:30 at night where he was, and he said, why am I talking to you? Because it's like he knew that I knew something wasn't right. And I just said, I just needed to call and tell you how much I love you and respect you, and that I am the man and Marine I am because of you. And I needed you to know that. And he essentially just told me, you better be all right. I just said, I'm working on it. I'll work on it. And he knew not to ask me where we were going or what we were doing, because Big Brother was going to drop the call. But he said, how long before I can talk to you again? And I said, 9 days. And he said, I better hear from you in 9 days. I said, yes, sir, you will. I'll call you. And he just said, I love you, son. So I love you too, Pop. Talk soon. And we left, and we left it at that. Made sure that our convoy was all good to go, and we had all the ammo, chow, water, all the things we need to do our jobs. And that React got called that morning, man. And when I walked out of the tent, I just had the bad feeling in my stomach, went right in my throat. And I knew we were going to get hit. I didn't know by what. I didn't know how bad it was going to be. I didn't know if it was going to be followed by small arms fire. Like, I didn't know, but I knew.
Just instinct.
I just knew.
Hmm.
I knew it. Like, as sure as we are, the sun's going to rise and fall. I knew we were going to get hit. And the good thing, like, you can call it God. You can call it my grandfather talking to me from beyond the grave. The good news is, pandemic, no pandemic, regardless of who holds what office, you can have your opinion and I can have mine. And even if they're different, we can still be friends. And
Amen to that.
Best country in the world, man. And so what I did was my commanding officer's Humvee was there. He was the only one that had a bomb blanket because we're the Marines. You know, we're poor and the bastard children of the military. We're not real sure who our dad is. But something told me to go get that bomb blanket, and I did. Out of his Humvee, he had an up armor. Clearly, he's a commanding officer, kind of an important guy. Then I go to the lead vehicle of the React team, we had two-door soft top Humvees, is what we operated in. In 2004, that's when the uproar of they need more armor, they don't have enough armor here at home started. Because the IEDs, which I think we even referred to as roadside bombs at the time, were becoming very prevalent. Their weapon of choice because they were effective. And so I ended up kicking the driver out of the driver's seat, put the bomb blanket down, and the driver's seat took the radio from the radio man, told all the guys to button up, which means if they gave it to you for protection, you put it on right now. Which at this point, the guys knew, I'm sure something was going on, because when it's 130 degrees, you don't need help being uncomfortable. And, the gear that we're issued, especially the Marine Corps, is not for comfort, believe it or not. And so, the guys put on neck protector, the groin protector, SAPI plates in their flak jacket, Kevlars, shatterproof. Wiley, they're not shatterproof. I'll get to that. And just false advertising. And I jump in the driver's seat. I'm on the radio with my right arm, and I'm driving with my left, and I gassed it. And within 3.5 minutes, we hit a triple stack tank mine. It was pressure plate ignited. It was 3 155 millimeter mortar rounds stacked on top of each other. And pressure plate means as soon as the tire made contact with the plate went down, lit a fuse, bomb goes off. And for those that don't understand unexploded ordnance or ordnance at all, 3 155 millimeters just equates to a big ass bomb. That's what it was. And it blew up directly beneath me. Blew me 30 feet to the top of the Humvee. And I stuck the landing with my head because I'm a Marine and we believe in good form. And I like to say because God's a comedian, I never lost consciousness and I never went into shock. It took the Black Hawk 42 minutes to come and get me from that hot LZ or landing zone. So, like I said, it was a long day at the office. And when I hit the deck, I knew midair, this is bad. This is very bad. And I knew that it was a big explosion. And when I hit the deck, everything was a blur because, there's smoke and sand because the sand's really fine over there. And it's pretty much the same in Kuwait, and I'm sure you remember. It's very fine. It's like baby powder.
Yeah,
it's extremely fine. It gets in and on everything, and so it was taking a while for the sand to come down and to settle, and to include the smoke and everything else. So you couldn't really see anything, and of course I was just hearing nothing but ringing, and I remember all this like it happened yesterday, and I just remember the ringing in my ears, and I remember knowing when I hit the ground before I even started my self-assessment that I'm hurt bad, and I knew it. This is bad, and so I'm still just hearing loud ringing, and I'm smelling, the fire and what smells like gunpowder, burnt flesh, and okay, I need to start my self-assessment. I need to assess the situation. So I look down and I can't see out of my right eye because my shatterproof lenses aren't shatterproof. I'm just waiting to get sued for that. And I know it's coming, but I'm ready. So whatever. And so I could only see out of my left eye. And I saw the first thing I did was I looked up at my left arm, and I saw daylight through my left arm because I had a piece of the firewall go through the bottom of my left arm and came out the top, and it blew off this part of my hand. And so I looked through my arm, saw daylight through my arm. My pinky was hanging down by my elbow. And I knew, okay, well, that's not good. That's not supposed to be like that. And then I looked down at my left leg. My left leg was wrapped around itself, and my fibia and my tibia were exposed. And my left combat boot had been blown off, but my sock was still on my foot. And so that just confirmed this was a tremendous amount of force in this explosion to be able to blow my combat boot off and not take my leg with it. I knew this was a significant explosion. And so when I saw my fibia and my tibia, saw that it was wrapped around myself and the foot was turned the wrong way, I said, okay, well, that's not supposed to be like that either. And I still hadn't taken a breath, and I just felt a bunch of pain in my chest and in my back. Well, what that was is it broke all my ribs because the steering wheel disengaged from the dashboard, and a series of events happened in a very short amount of time, just like in any explosion. And when the dashboard disengaged and the steering wheel disengaged, it hit me in my chest. And when it hit me in my chest, it broke all my ribs because it made all my magazines. We wear them in the front of our flak jacket. All my magazines exploded, and then it ejected me. Well, by this time, I know, okay, I can't see out of one of my eyes. I'm most likely going to lose my left arm and my left leg. My right leg hurt, but it looked normal. The only thing that wasn't broken or shattered was my right arm, and I had some burns and some shrapnel, but nothing, it was still functional. And at this time, I hear the guy kicked out of the driver's seat yelling my last name, Schick, Schick, Schick. And I start to try and pull myself back to the Humvee, and I'm trying to go in the direction of his noise. So 2 things. I need to let him know, like, hey, man, I'm okay, kind of. And then I need you to stop yelling because you're just making us a target. Stop yelling. And
by the way, just to cut off real quick, I mean, like, for you to have that thought while, like, you know, like, there was a calmness to you to still know the right thing to do in the midst of maybe others freaking and panicking.
Well, you know, and it could be attributed to the training that your tax dollars pay for, or it could be attributed to, you know, making peace with death, which I did long before we left. I set my family down and I said, listen, I want you guys to know, if you see some Marines walking up to your door in dress blues, odds are I'm dead, but I want you to know I died doing something that I absolutely love and is in my blood. And I had made peace with that. I never thought about and never crossed my mind that I could be severely wounded and live. And so I'm just taking these things as they come second by second. And when he broke military protocol and he yelled my first name is when it became very personal. This is still a great friend of mine because I was the only one severely wounded in the blast, by the way. The other injuries were blown eardrums, which is, I mean, no walk in the park. And when he yelled my first name, it pierced my soul because I couldn't respond. I couldn't do anything. I realized I'm just scooping sand. I'm not going anywhere. And it just broke my heart. It broke my heart. And so I looked down and I just immediately prayed and I said, hey, big man, please don't allow my brothers to watch me die. Just don't take me in front of my brothers. That's all I ask. As soon as the skids leave the deck, I'm all yours, meaning the skids to the Black Hawk or the medevac. I'm all yours. Just please don't take me in front of my family. That's all I ask. And I looked up, and by the time I looked up, I mean, the guys are starting to run to me. They had found me, and they, we got you, Schick. We got you, brother. And, it took several of them just to pick me up. I mean, we have flak jackets and all the rounds, and everything we carry is heavy. We carry a lot of gear. And they get me to the second vehicle, which was still operable and didn't get damaged in the explosion. And they drive me up to the command post where Doc's ready and waiting on me. And Doc starts working on me, and I just start yelling at him, calling him a stingy bastard because he'd only hit me with 2 sticks of morphine, and I knew he had more. And I just didn't know why he wouldn't give me more. I didn't know that it could kill me if he did, and I didn't care. I just knew I was in pain. He had a remedy, and he wasn't giving me as much as I wanted. But Doc starts working on me, and I'm really grateful for this time, because in those 2-door soft top Humvees, you can. The back of the driver's seat, passenger seat are open to the back of the Humvee. And I'm laid in the back of the Humvee, and Doc's working on me, and he's bandaging me and then unbandaging me because I'm just bleeding everywhere. And I keep hearing him look up, and he's looking at the command post, and he's saying, where's the bird? And I knew like it was bad. And Doc knew it was bad. But I got to hold the hand of every one of these Marines that I'm still just completely inspired by, admire, love, trust. They're my family. And I got to tell every one of them how much I love them, and that they have to fight for me, that I'm out of the fight, and that, to go forward and fight hard. And I got to tell every one of them that. No, like, who gets that opportunity? That's why I wouldn't change any of it, how any of it happened, because the bravado that we talked about before we went live was completely gone. It was human to human connection, no titles, no stereotypes, and it was because of trauma, the great equalizer. And so I was really grateful for that time. And I remember when I finally heard the rotors, and I just felt this sense of like relief coupled by this abundance of fear, because I was leaving my family. And I remember the guys.
Not so much fear of death, just leaving the family.
Yeah, I didn't want to leave. I didn't want to leave my guys. I mean, that was my family, and I was about to leave them. And I knew they were going to be in harm's way, and I knew there wasn't a damn thing I could do about it. That's a tough pill to swallow. And so the guys loaded me on the bird. And I remember my platoon sergeant, who's since passed, but he kissed me on my forehead, and he was trying not to cry when he said it. And he said, "We'll see you soon, Jack London." Because he always called me Jack London after my grandfather, who was first-generation Marine, my uncle, was second-generation Marine. They were both named Jack London Schick and Jack London Schick Jr. Clearly, Jake wasn't a cool enough name, so he always called me Jack London. And I knew he was lying because he was trying not to cry. And that motivated me. It motivated me because I was like, okay. All right, we'll see. And the bird takes off, and out of it all, through all the surgeries, the hospitals, the drugs, the alcohol, the destruction, that was the hardest part. That was leaving them. That, to this day, hurts every time I think about it, because it was I've never felt that lonely in my life. And I mean, that probably attributes to some stuff that I went through as a child, and it just completely compounded the problem. But I remember getting the attention of one of the litter crew, and he came up and he put his ear over my mouth, and I yelled, "How long?" And I remember when I yelled it, because in the back of those birds, if you don't have a headset, you can't hear it. It's so loud. From when you probably went over with USO or whatever, it's really, really loud.
Yep.
And when I yelled "how long," like, I felt more life leave my body, because I was using energy I shouldn't use. But I needed to know how much time, because I'm right now, I'm about to start relying on my grit and my toughness. I'm going to try and meet God halfway. And the guy radioed up front to the captain, and he came back and he yelled in my right ear, and he said 12 mics or 12 minutes. As soon as he told me, I closed my eyes and I said, "God, look, man, I'm going to have to renege on the original verbal agreement. I know I can do 12 minutes. And it's exactly what I told him, as if I had any say in the matter, But clearly it was granted, because I'm talking to you. And they took me into Balad, which is a field hospital. It was just a big tent right outside Baghdad. And they get me off the bird, and They're loading me into this tent, and I remember they just kept asking name, rank, social, name, rank, social, name, rank, social. And as grunt Marines, we get these tattoos on our rib cage called the meat tags, and they're just our dog tags, but on our rib cages. And that's in case you happen to get red mist in the wind and you can't be identified. Well, we have it tattooed right there, and so it just kept pissing me off. Like they had asked me name, rank, social, and it's like if you slam your finger in the door, someone go, "Are you okay? Are you okay? Are you okay?" And like every time they ask, I don't know why, and I'm sure there's some science behind it. The pain gets worse. I don't know why. And so, but it was the same thing, and it just was. I'd had enough, and so I was like, "Look, I'm not telling you anymore. It's tattooed right here. I'm not talking anymore. Do not see you guys." And they load me in the tent, and they get me covered up. And I remember that one of the doctors comes in, and he starts sewing up because I had shrapnel in my cheek and the side of my face and my chin and my neck, and he starts to sew me up. And he said, "Oops." And I glanced up at him. I said, "What do you mean, oops, doc?" And he said, "Hey, sorry, Marie, messed up on your stitches. We're going to have to start again." At the time, I had a sheet over to my neck, and I looked up at him and I said, "Hey, doc, I don't know if you've seen me from the neck down, but I'm pretty certain the scratches on my face are the least of our worries right now." And he gave this little nod to the anesthetist who was standing up to my right. That's the last thing I remember. He gave him the nod, like, "Please put this dude to sleep. Like, make this guy shut up." And I completely don't blame him. But that's the last thing I remember until I was woken up by Nurse Jax after they did their initial operations. And that's when she had told me, like, "Hey, Marine, I hate to tell you this, but take your right foot." And I just remember thinking to myself, okay, when I did my self-assessment, my left leg was wrapped around itself. My right leg looked normal but hurt. They took the wrong foot. Long day just got longer. But, I mean, it's government, right? So 50-50 shot. Good enough for government work. 50-50. And then she explained, "No, sweetheart, your right foot was dead when you got here." And I remember her putting sand in a surgical glove, and she held it up, and she said, "This was your foot when you got here."
You had no idea.
Had no clue. Doc knew, come to find out. He was like, "Yeah, I couldn't find a pulse in your foot, in your right foot." I said, "Why didn't you tell me, man?" He's like, "Well, I didn't want to, let alone, I didn't know if you were going to live. I didn't want to tell you, like, your right leg's about to get chopped off." And so he didn't tell me, but for good reason. But then that's when I had to call. She asked me, "Do you want to call anyone, talk to anyone?" And I said, "Yeah, I need to call. I need to call my dad." And
That's what I was going to ask you. How many days from that first call till you called Pop? 4
days.
And so he knows. He knows after, if he's hearing from you in 4, he knows it's not good.
Yep. And he answered the phone. I said, "Hey, Pop," and he said, "Why am I talking to you?" And I said, "They got me." He said, "What do you mean they got me?" I said, "They got me, Dad. I'm hurt. I'm hurt bad." And I said, "They had to take my right leg." And then my dad said, it was a long pause. I say long. It was maybe a couple minutes. And then he said, "Are you going to make it?" And I said, "I don't know. So please hurry." And because I knew that, I was going to probably see my blood family in Germany. And it was amazing how at this moment of you go from, for all intents and purposes, a modern day gladiator to a helpless child in literally a millisecond. And all I wanted was my dad. It's just crazy how you can go through these experiences and you can go through all this training and all this preparation and hours and hours and hours and days and weeks and months of all of this preparation, training, and hard work and challenging things. And that quick, you just want your dad. You're a little kid and you just want your dad. And I remember he said, "I'll see you soon. And I love you, son." I said, "I love you too, Pop." And that was it. And then not long after that, they loaded me on a bird and sent me to Germany. I was only in Germany about 17 hours. I was in Germany long enough for them to stabilize me and send me back to the States. And I went to Bethesda, and that's where I saw my blood family for the first time. And that was a long flight. I mean, I remember we lost several guys on the flight, and it was that was that was the most uncomfortable I've ever been in my life, as far as pain is concerned, because every little bump and every little bit of turbulence was like getting blown up all over again. Every little movement for months would be like getting blown up all over again. And there was no amount of drugs or whatever that could change that. And that wears on you. That wears on you in a great way.
Well, all these years later, you're making an impact, and this comes after 50 surgeries, 23 blood transfusions, all the rehabilitation, burns, ligament and bone loss, fractures in the legs, the amputation, traumatic brain injury, post-traumatic stress disorder, and here you are all these years later living to tell about it in very vivid detail too. And I know that every time you tell these stories, you make an impact in someone's life. And you have the organization that you run now too. I asked you at the start of the interview about, how much this fuels you every day. And you said pretty much every moment of every day. What is it like to take these experiences that had you near death, countless moments, hours, days, to now be able to help save other lives?
Well, I mean, it's how you turn tragedy into triumph. You make peace with the fact that it doesn't have anything to do with you. Then it has everything to do with how many people you can positively impact until you're called home, whenever that is, because we don't know. And it makes all of it worth it. And it makes all of the pain and suffering and the horrific experiences that most humans shouldn't have to experience in modern day. It makes it all worth it, because I get to go tell people about my pain and suffering and let them know there's nothing special about theirs, that it's all relative. And I get to do it in my way, in the way that I'm doing it. And it's not, and to let them know, like, I'm not here to attack anybody today, but you're going to leave here looking inward, no doubt about it. And that's the point. So strap in, because it's going to get bumpy.
Well, you're clearly not afraid to dig deep and tell it. And it's one thing for me to say, well, of course a Marine's not afraid. But again, getting back to some of the discussion that you and I have had, there's that tough outer shell, the toughest perhaps of anybody out there, of being a Marine. And look, I see it in sports. You know that. I mean, you can't ever admit weakness. And so there's so many layers. I tell people all the time, just because a guy's making millions of dollars doesn't mean that life is easy. Doesn't mean that he isn't dealing with crap at home. Everybody deals with stuff. And look, we haven't even covered I skipped over from Iraq and getting home to Bethesda to where you're at today. And I know, without knowing all the details, that you had to have gone through days, weeks, months, years of hell right?
Yeah. All the physical injuries you described were just that, physical injuries. The last thing you said was TBI, post-traumatic stress. Those are the things I still deal with. My fake leg is a tool to help me get upright and move. That's it. Just like someone gets a screwdriver to unscrew a screw out of a drawer. My leg is the exact same. Doesn't have feelings. It can't make any decisions on its own. Until it's on my body, it just sits there. It's a tool. It's the brain that's where the injuries live forever. That's where The scars you can't see are the ones that are most debilitating to somebody's life and well-being. And just because an athlete's making millions of dollars, that all that means is an athlete's making millions of dollars. And it stops there. That has nothing to do with how his soul looks. Yeah. And only what his bank account looks like. And that's why I tell people, don't get confused on which one you're trying to feed throughout your life, your bank account or your soul account. Because one, at the end, if you're fortunate enough to be lying on your deathbed, one of those is going to truly matter. The other one will have zero to do with what's coming next.
I want to talk about, I've popped up and I'll let everybody know to learn more about Jacob. You can go to his website, jacobschick.net, SCHICK. But also you can go and check out more about his organization, 22 Kill. And this is something that I know is, we kind of talked about it. It motivates you and has you going every single day. I want to pop that one up too, 22kill.com. Tell me about that, the mission, what you guys are doing every single day.
Yeah, for sure. And thank you for that. So 22 Kill is the name that stems from a study that was done by the Veterans Administration in 2012 that determined on average 22 veterans die by suicide every single day. Okay. Since then, the number has come down somewhat. But not much, not enough to stop the mission. It's, still 20 point something a day, still with over half of those veterans being Vietnam era veterans. And, it's just an unacceptable thing. So that's where the number 22 comes from. Kill, because suicide's an act. No matter how much you want to church it up, that's what it is. And it's supposed to punch you in the face. That's the point. It's supposed to. And that's where the name stemmed from. And then, the 22 push-up challenge came from what can we do to make people around the world know that this is an epidemic that is affecting the warrior community. And of course, push-ups, the quintessential military workout. And so it's like, okay, you know what? We'll do 22 push-ups for 22 days and we'll have people film it. And then they'll challenge somebody else to do the same thing in order to make this suicide awareness take hold. That was the goal, right? Which was okay until we had tens of thousands of people do this thing. And it did, and that still didn't qualify as viral. And then The Rock did it, and then overnight it was viral. And so thanks to The Rock for doing it, because that was a big deal. But we weren't prepared to take on the onslaught of support and everything that we got, because we weren't real sure. We were just an awareness organization at the time, and we wanted to help other organizations that were already doing good things and help them get bigger, better, stronger, faster, in order to help people. And so we decided really quickly, like, hey, look, we've got to start in-house programming and to where we can get our hands on these people and follow them all the way through their journey. Because that's the only way you're going to effectively help somebody help themselves, is that you have that accountability at that point. And not only that, you can maintain integrity with every donor dollar you get. I'll be able to look at a donor and say, to the penny, this is where your funds went, and this is how we utilize them for this mission. And so it was twofold, really, that approach. And then we've since evolved into this completely full-on HIPAA compliant mental and emotional wellness organization. And that's the point, is because we serve military, veterans, first responders, law enforcement officers, frontline healthcare workers, to include all their families, because you have to treat the family unit. You can't just treat the individual. I know when I came home, I left a wake that was pretty big in my path and affected a lot of people, and still does. This just in, I still have bad days. And so, it's something that is very near and dear to me, not only because of my own struggles with drug addiction, alcoholism, and suicidal ideation, and anxiety and depression and hypervigilance, and I could go on and on and on. But because I've buried 32 of my personal friends who've died by suicide. I know 8 that were killed in combat. You don't have to be a mathematician to understand that those numbers don't sync up. And so this is something that's very near and dear to my heart. It always will be, starting with my own experiences, but then looking at these families and these children at these funerals and saying, I'm sorry. And that's all you can say. I'm going to try harder. And, it's something you don't forget. And so you're rolling out the One Tribe Foundation. The whole reason behind that is we've outgrown the 22 kill moniker. And we serve so much more than veterans now that it's a great problem to have, right? But we have to be willing to evolve and grow with where we are in mental and emotional wellness, not only as a country, but as a world, and let people know, hey, we're here to help you. We're here to help you. All you have to do is show up, and we'll take it from there. Yeah. But that's the whole idea behind One Tribe Foundation. Is that means it's the human tribe. And 22 Kill is not going anywhere because you have to remember where you have to be reminded daily where you came from, right? You have to remember where your roots lie. And so 22 Kill will become the education and awareness piece of One Tribe Foundation.
And I like right when you go to the 22 Kill website, a pop-up right away. If this is an emergency, please dial 911 or call the National Suicide Hotline, 1-800-273-8255, just right there as that resource. And, This is the last thing before I get to my baseball themed questions. But again, whether it's athletes, whether it's veterans or active military, or, we all in some form or another think we're tough, some tougher than others, but, whatever your level of quote unquote toughness is, doesn't mean that mental health is easy or that it's fake or that it shouldn't be talked about. There's just this stigma that, and I was very lucky enough through Blue Cross Blue Shield of Kansas City to do a 6-part mental health series recently on this podcast, separate from what we were doing now. And the range, Jake, that we hit, not just first responders, but kids dealing with COVID right now, or adults for that matter, teachers, nurses, frontline workers, on and on. This affects everybody. And as well as I do, you're a little younger than me, but we're in the same generation. That next generation knows no other way than the addiction of their devices and the highs and lows of somebody liking your social media stuff. This is a different world that we're living in right now. And I think it takes people like you, and for that matter, people like me with a platform, to be able to let people know that it's okay to talk about this stuff. Yeah.
And look, man, we talked about it before we went hot. Right things, right reasons, the rest will take care of itself. That's what I tell the tribe at work all the time. That's what I tell my kids. Stay humble, be kind, work hard. You want to do life well, stay humble, be kind, work hard. Right things, right reasons. The rest will take care of itself. No one's promising you a rose garden. You're going to have challenges. Mm-hmm. And that doesn't make you special. And I think the more we talk about this, the more that and whether they're athletes or, you're exactly right, man, the global pandemic, COVID, has made people be forced to understand the significant difference in being lonely and alone. One is completely different than the other. If you find yourself alone, congratulations for doing the work on yourself. Congratulations for practicing whatever your daily practices are to be comfortable and okay and love yourself in your own skin. Kudos. If you find yourself lonely, which I know is majority of the population, and I don't mean just here in the United States, around the world, it's okay. It doesn't make you abnormal. You're just like majority of everyone else. And the why is irrelevant.
All right, I want to move on to the baseball themed questions, which has nothing to do with your choosing football over baseball and whatever abilities or not, but they're brought to you by Kissick Construction, trusted team, reliable partner. Check them out at kissickco.com. Biggest home run that you have hit in your career?
To be determined. It's there he goes. He's back.
I lost you. You lost me. Either way, we'll keep on rolling and we'll edit whatever out. But so biggest home run in your career?
Biggest home run in my career. It's just is to be determined. I'm still breathing. I got a lot of life to live, as much as God wants to let me anyway. And I'm really blessed to have been able to do some really cool things and have some really cool experiences that had nothing to do with comfortability. Had everything to do with saying this terrifies me and I'm going to do it anyway. And so any of them come from that. But for me, yeah, to be determined. It's not time to write the book. It's not over yet.
I like that. Actually, of all the years now doing this, I haven't heard that answer, and it's a really unique perspective. How about a swing and a miss? Biggest swing and miss you've taken, and what did you learn from it?
Man, I mean, how much time do we have again?
Right, we learn every day.
But I think professionally was one where I wanted to absorb another organization that was a really big organization as far as numbers and outreach and people involved, because I had a personal connection to the founder who had passed suddenly. And I talked to my board and they said, Jake, you think you guys, like, I know I can do this. I know I can do it. And I know I can make it right. And I know I've got it. I can get it done. I got it. And they said, we're not going to tell you no. We're telling you not right now. And it was the first time that my board didn't back me on something I wanted to do. And it was the best thing they could have done, because I don't think I could have turned it around and made it successful. And so that was something that, not so much a miss. I mean, it was basically I avoided another IED, and it was through the people that I lean on and I love hard, because they're the people smarter than me, and I need their guidance and direction and wisdom. So technically didn't end up being a miss, but definitely a save from myself. And so truly grateful for that.
And a lesson learned.
Absolutely.
And then the last one is Small Ball, and that's the book I'm sending you. This is heading your way. The new book, Small Ball, Big Results. It's about the little things out in December that add up to the big things every day. We'd all like to hit the home runs. We'd all like to have those big moments, but as well as I do that it's those little things every single moment of the day that suddenly add up to victories. What is Small Ball to you?
So, just an analogy we'll use, because my COO and I have talked about this the last couple of days. And, the view from the top of the mountain is beautiful, right? It's beautiful, but that's it. All the lessons you learn are on the climb. And, if you're not at the top with someone else, it doesn't have meaning. Unless you can share that beauty with somebody else, it doesn't have any meaning. So let's head back down the mountain. Let's grab a hand and head back up. The climb is the small ball. That's where everything matters. That's where your soul gets fed. That's where you feed other souls. That's where life lessons are learned. And then when you get to the top, it's as beautiful as you knew it would be, but you earned it.
Profound. All right, 4 final questions. We'll fly through these as we round the bases. The first one, I'll go lighthearted here. What kind of actor are you?
Whatever kind my boss tells me to be at the time. Yeah, it's I love it, man. I love it's there's something cathartic and therapeutic in being able to go on set somewhere and be somebody that's not you. But it's completely driven by your life experience. So it's interesting.
You can check out the website, learn more about everything that Jacob is doing, and he's been featured everywhere, interviewed by everyone. I mean, like when you can go Ellen one day and Joel Goldberg the next, it's all the same. However, look, that'll lead me to number 2. I live in a world of segues as a television guy, and you and I talked before we got on, and I thought it was also a profound discussion about comparison, and we all can oftentimes be held hostage to comparison, and I know that you were here to say that you don't need to do that.
Yeah, no, because I'll just use personal experience. When I have people come up to me like, "Oh, Jake, I couldn't imagine what you've gone through physically, and I've only had a sprained ankle or whatever." And I'll say, "Well, how do you know that sprained ankle wasn't as bad as what I went through?" Well, because I know it was just a sprained ankle. And I said, "Yeah, to you. How do you know that sprained ankle wasn't the worst thing you've been through, your worst trauma? And how do you know that what I went through with being blown up in war was the worst thing I've been through? How do you know? I want to show me on paper how you can quantify it." Well, I can't. Exactly. So do me a favor and don't compare and contrast your pain and suffering to mine. Let yours be yours and mine be mine, and leave it at that. Because when you do that, what you're doing is you are subconsciously belittling yourself, and you don't even realize it. It's hard enough as it is to look in the mirror and be completely in love with that person looking back at you. Stop making it harder on yourself and not even realizing that that's what you're doing.
I love this discussion. I really do. It's funny, and because we hear those voices in our head, right? And it is the subconscious. When you were talking before, earlier in the interview, and you say, "Well, you've been to Kuwait," and my immediate response was, "Yeah, but I didn't do anything over there. I just walked over there with a microphone, and and then I was like, well, but that we don't need to compare that one." Although I would say, I'm in shorts and a polo shirt, and and everybody over there is in all the gear, but I know what 118 with the wind blowing there feels like now. I never really understood that you could get goosebumps in the heat, but it just, all these experiences help you walk in someone else's shoes in some form or another, and you don't need to be them. But I think that when you could rid yourself of that comparison, you're just so much more free to be yourself, and then to understand people better, instead of saying, "Well, man, I don't know what that's like, Jake. That must have been the worst." Right. And it's more just trying to understand it. Like, I know you better now after this interview than I knew before, even though I knew what the injuries and the story was beforehand. You know what I mean? Like, it just a different and a healthier perspective. All right. Third question for you. You also said,
thank you, because I dig it. I dig that question because so many people don't realize how often they do it. Many, but my own children.
We do it every day. We all do it.
Yeah. So thank you.
And no, thank you. I mean, look, I'm learning from you as we go here too, and that's always the hope. Third question as we round the bases, and this is a really good one too. I mean, this stuff pops in my head as we're going, but you said something earlier that really spoke to me. Like, we are, and I'm sick of talking about it, but we are so knee deep in politics. I thought we'd be done with that, once election season was over, and then maybe we'll never be done with it. And it's the worst in this country versus other countries because whatever. But like, I've got friends on both sides of the aisle, and I just try to figure out a way. And here's someone that served our country at the highest of level, not just you, and not just because you got hurt over there, but anyone that serves our country, I think, has something special in them. Again, I don't want to compare too much, but yet here you see this country that you gave blood, sweat, tears, a limb for, and now you see everything that's going on. Like, how do we bring people together?
Yeah, and I would do it all again tomorrow. Zero hesitation.
I know you would.
Best country in the world, even in its present climate, driven by politics and media, if you want to know the why. And I can say that unapologetically. I know for a fact that the list the line of people that want to shake my hand is just as long as the line of people that want to punch me in my face, and both of which are none of my business. So, look, this is the way we approach it, the way I personally approach it, which by default, the organization, we're apolitical, non-denominational, because we believe wholeheartedly everyone deserves a shot at living well. Everybody. Here's my thing. Regardless of how you do or don't vote, regardless of who you do or don't pray to, regardless of your ethnicity, socioeconomic background, how do you identify? All irrelevant to me. Like, you're a good person or you suck. There's very little gray area there. My thing is, I have more than one friend I've disagreed with politically and ideologically, maybe?
Ideologically.
Whatever, it's a word now.
Yeah.
That I could sit there and say, yeah, I just don't agree with that. But my love and respect and admiration for that person supersedes my disagreement. Somehow, some way, we've got to figure out how to put the equation back the way it's supposed to go. Where I can disagree with you, but I can still love you unconditionally. And that's only going to happen was when we realize that we are all fundamentally flawed, and it's by design. And regardless of what side of the aisle or how someone votes or whatever, odds are they're probably wrong anyway. Because we're humans and we're flawed, and that's okay.
Strong words. We'll end it with something even stronger. The final question of what has been a phenomenal interview, the walk-off question: how can people help in terms of your organization? How can people help? What can they do?
Look, you always answer this a certain way, and there's a reason for it. And you said it early on. You never served by wearing a uniform. And that said, you're a prime example of the people that have proven you don't have to wear a uniform to serve your nation. It is a huge misnomer. You just don't. It's just not true. You're an example. You can serve your nation and not get shot at. It's possible. Happens every day. People like you do it every day. So my thing is, if you're truly willing to sacrifice some of your time, talent, or treasure, you can help. But people need to understand now that service and sacrifice are synonymous. You cannot do one without the other. Not possible. And I don't care if it's my organization or Mama Lee's or whoever's organization. If you're not willing to if you're not willing to sacrifice some of your time, talent, or treasure, you don't want to help. You're talking. And I hear enough people talk.
Yeah.
Again, I don't care if it's my organization or someone else's or, something to do with animals. Doesn't matter. The point is, go do something that is greater than you'll ever be. Be a part of something that's greater and has more meaning than you'll ever have as an individual. And then let me know what that does for your soul.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And there are a million, I'm exaggerating, but amazing organizations out there.
Yeah.
In doing great things, and it's fulfilling to be a part of them. I just joined the board of an organization called The Swell, and it is a lot of veterans and first responders, and they take those that are suffering from PTSD and brain injuries and all that, surfing as a therapeutic. It's not just that, but as a therapeutic means, and I love what they're doing. And so point being that there are so many ways to get involved, and certainly people can do so with Jacob's organization and in many, many other ways too. And so real quick, go on, Jake.
I just want to tell, just so your audience knows, the vision behind what we do and the why and why we do it. It's because, and this is what I tell the employees, I'm like, listen, in all the all hands meetings, and I say, there's a lot of stuff I do with them, it's broken record, I'm sure, but it's by design. If you don't believe that what you're doing has the ability to change the world, please leave. Because you can't do amazing things with an average mindset. It's just not possible. And so that's why it's important that people understand the reason behind military veterans, first responders, law enforcement officers, frontline healthcare workers. Because when you were growing up, Joel, you probably at one point wanted to be a cop or a firefighter or a nurse or doctor, whatever, as a kid growing up. I mean, all of us. And so my thing is like, okay, well, if we can get this elite group of people, which are elite in their own respect, in their own regard, in their own line of work, that a lot of these children idolize at some point in their childhood to be the tip of the spear on mental and emotional wellness, and can say it's okay to not be okay and bare their chest cavity to the world. That has the ability and the power to change the narrative on mental and emotional wellness everywhere. That's the idea. Be the tip of the spear to the change.
Well said in every single way. I want to real quick shout out to my sponsors, Kansas City Audio Visual, Kissick Construction, and Enterprise Bank and Trust. Businesses often come to Enterprise Bank because they demand and frankly are worthy of more than the status quo and need a local partner who understands their business. Huge thank you to Jacob Schick. And Jake, I feel like, we spent a lot of time that I know you so much better now than I did before, which is a reminder that, you can read someone's story, but until you really interact with them, you don't know them on a different level. And so, when I thank you for everything and I tell you it's an honor to be with you, it's not that it's because you served our country. Of course it is. It's because of what you're doing for the world and for people. And you do that by just sharing it with me and my audience. And hopefully I have a small part in that too. And so I want to tell everybody just to learn more about Jake, his speaking services, everything that he's doing in his organizations, go to jacobschick.net, SCHICK. And I just want to thank you. We'll continue the discussion. I want to help always any way that I can. Look forward to meeting you in person at some point, and really grateful for the time you spent today.
Hey, I'll tell you, and I mean the same to your listeners and everyone else that says that, and you're worth it. Don't forget it.
Well said. Everybody is, no doubt about it. So, so great to be able to visit with Jacob. You can find out more information, whether you want my book or anything regarding what I'm doing. People know how to find me. I think that watch or listen to the show, but it's joelgoldbergmedia.com. He is Jacob Schick. I'm Joel. Thanks for watching and hope to catch you next time on Rounding the Bases.